Tonight, Harvey Weinstein treated for chest pains hours after being found guilty of rape and sexual assault. The former Hollywood mogul facing up to 29 years behind bars. The verdict hailed this morning as a watershed moment for his victims and the Me Too movement. Now, Mimi Haley, the woman who faced him down in that courtroom, and Ronan Farrow, who helped break the story, join us live.
Chaos and confusion. This hotel full of tourists in Spain now on lockdown after a case of coronavirus is confirmed. Fears spiking over the outbreak. The stock market plunging more than 1,000 points. Overnight, the Trump administration asking for $2.5 billion to fight the outbreak. The new fears about possible drug shortages, as health officials now warn this could turn into a global pandemic.
South Carolina showdown. The Democratic candidates gear up for a huge debate tonight. The bullseye on frontrunner Bernie Sanders as Joe Biden hopes to save his campaign.
Winter wallop. Two storms sweeping across the country, colliding to bring the worst snow of the year to Detroit and millions across the Midwest.
History on the hardwood. Overnight, the college basketball phenom Sabrina Ionescu doing something no athlete has ever done before, all while fighting the flu.
And the heart-wrenching goodbye to Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna. Vanessa Bryant speaking publicly for the first time.
God knew they couldn't be on this earth without each other.
And the moment bringing Michael Jordan to tears as thousands pay their final respects.
We love you both and miss you forever and always.
Live in Times Square, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning, America, and what a tribute. Around 20,000 people coming out to celebrate the lives of Kobe and Gianna Bryant. A lot of love at the Staples Center yesterday.
It was absolutely beautiful, and we'll have much more on that ahead. But first, we want to begin with that breaking news. Harvey Weinstein waking up in a hospital this morning instead of behind bars after that watershed verdict, convicted on 2 counts of sexual misconduct.
He was supposed to be jailed on Rikers Island, but was rushed to Bellevue Hospital here in Manhattan instead. That's a live shot of the hospital right now, and Amy Robach is there with the latest. Good morning, Amy.
That's right. Good morning, George. Harvey Weinstein is being treated here at Bellevue Hospital after his lawyers say he was experiencing heart palpitations and chest pains and high blood pressure as well. This all comes after a jury acquitted him of the 2 most serious charges. And while he may have avoided a life sentence, those 2 guilty verdicts may send the 67-year-old from this Manhattan hospital straight to prison for a very long time.
Harvey Weinstein, guilty of 2 of the 5 counts against him, ordered to report to the notorious Rikers Island prison. But on the way, a detour to Bellevue Hospital, where Weinstein's attorney says the former film mogul went for evaluation after experiencing heart palpitations.
We just heard before coming on that he was experiencing some high blood pressure and some heart palpitations.
On Monday, the jury of 7 men and 5 women finding the 67-year-old guilty of criminal sexual assault against Miriam Halei and rape in the 3rd degree of Jessica Mann, a former aspiring actress.
To the survivors of Harvey Weinstein, I owe, and we all owe, an immense debt to you, who had the courage beyond measure to speak your story to the world.
Now facing up to a possible 29 years in prison, his lawyers asking he be sent to Rikers Island's North Infirmary Unit complex, where there are more than 250 beds in specialized units for inmates who require protective custody due to their notoriety.
When the verdict came in, all he kept saying over and over again was, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. How could this happen in America?
On Monday, the jury also acquitting Weinstein on the 2 most serious criminal charges, 2 counts of predatory sexual assault and 1 count of first-degree rape.
By no means am I disappointed with the jury's unanimous statement that Harvey Weinstein is guilty of sexual assault and rape.
Dozens of women accused of sexual assault, harassment, and abuse lasting over a period of at least 30 years. Their stories first came to light in The New Yorker and The New York Times. Actress Rose McGowan, who said her career was ruined by allegations of rape against Weinstein, said her healing can begin, hailing the verdict as a huge step forward in our collective healing. Actress Annabella Sciorra testified that Weinstein raped her, but the jury acquitted him of the charges stemming from her allegations, saying in a statement, "My testimony was painful but necessary. I spoke for myself and with the strength of 80-plus victims of Harvey Weinstein in my heart."
Now, Weinstein has denied all allegations of non-consensual sex. His attorneys say they will appeal those convictions, and they are vowing to fight for him to be released on bail until his sentencing. That sentencing date is set for March 11th, where Harvey Weinstein could face up to 29 years behind bars, guys.
We'll see. All right. Thank you, Amy. Joining us now, Ronan Farrow, author of Catch and Kill and the host of the Catch and Kill podcast. You helped break the story in 2017. So what was your reaction to the verdict, and what do you think it means?
The story of Harvey Weinstein is in so many respects the story of a long and unsuccessful fight for any kind of accountability for someone so powerful. A lot of the stories have been not just about the allegations, but about the tactics used to dodge accountability, including in the criminal justice system. You know, we broke the story of how in 2015, this very DA, Cyrus Vance, dropped an effort to charge Weinstein, where they had tape of him admitting to an assault.
Well, and he called this a new day yesterday after the conviction. And you look at the circumstances here, this is the kind of case that in the past might not have even been brought. There was consensual sex after the allegations, after the sexual assault. They maintained contact, the accusers did, with Harvey Weinstein, yet he's still convicted.
It's a watershed moment in terms of how these cases are tried. You know, you have the history of the Cosby case, which initially was a hung jury, and then they did a retrial and they got a conviction. And you have this case where you have witnesses openly saying there was an ongoing relationship, there were complications. This is what sexual violence looks like so often.
I remember when you joined us in January, and you said the predatory charges were not a slam dunk. They were a big risk. So you were not surprised that those verdicts came back not guilty.
I was not, and it's important to note, you know, the jury was not asked to consider whether they should convict on the rape of Annabella Sciorra. They were asked whether to convict on this extra predatory sexual assault charge. The idea that her own incident was outside the statute of limitations, but it could show a pattern, that it could be an enhancing charge. And, you know, I'm not surprised that that was a complicated portion of it. The jury actually evinced some confusion. They asked to be reread instructions. They asked again if they could convict on her charge. And we're not inside that room. For all we know, they may have just wanted to go to the 50% mark in terms of charging sentencing options.
You know Annabella well. What do you think this verdict means to her?
There is no doubt in my mind that Annabella Sciorra, like so many women who spoke first to journalists and then to prosecutors, played an integral part in making this outcome happen and in getting Weinstein behind bars. Obviously, with the mixed verdict, there's also a bittersweet component to this, but I think she can legitimately say what she said in that quote, that her testimony was necessary.
And Weinstein's still facing charges in L.A. 2 accusers there as well. How strong is that case?
It is potentially a more expansive case because there's a general bar on admitting what's called, you know, prior bad acts or propensity evidence. We don't like to, in the court system, correctly, for due process reasons, have a bunch of witnesses get up and say, well, in addition to the things you're being asked to convict on, there's all this other bad stuff. That said, there were limited ways to bring in extra witnesses to show a pattern in this case, and in L.A., they actually have lifted a lot of those restraints altogether in sexual violence cases. So I talked to the assistant district attorney in Los Angeles yesterday, and he said we are absolutely proceeding, and they are hoping to widen the scope and number of people they can bring in.
Oh, not over yet. Ronan, thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
In our next half hour, Mimi Haley, one of the women who testified against Harvey Weinstein, ultimately put him behind bars. She's going to join us live.
All right. We're going to go now to the latest on the coronavirus emergency. Lots of major developments overnight. The Trump administration has asked Congress for $2.5 billion to help fight the outbreak. This comes as the CDC issues its highest travel warning to South Korea, and the number of cases are growing there and in Italy and Iran.
And now concerns growing at a hotel in Spain where a case was just confirmed. There are now more than 80,000 cases worldwide, and the outbreak is also sparking fears on Wall Street, the Dow plunging more than 1,000 points on Monday. We're going to have more on that in a moment. But first, James Longman joins us from Milan. Good morning, James.
Yeah, good morning, Robin. The Milanese are trying to go about business as usual, but it's hard. Much of the city is still on lockdown. The Duomo, the famous cathedral, that is shut to tourists. Libraries, schools, universities, they're all closed. This, as we learn that the virus has now traveled from here in Italy to a Spanish island. This morning, the urgent race to stop the global spread of coronavirus. The potential for the spread of the virus clear, as an Italian tourist has now tested positive in a Spanish hotel, forcing more than 1,000 guests to get tested there. In Italy, the number of reported cases here at over 200, an increase that World Health officials call deeply concerning. A number of countries now restricting travel to or from the Italian red zone, and Kuwait the first to stop flights to Italy. 50,000 residents across 12 towns are under lockdown as the death toll rises to at least 7. The normally bustling streets of Milan, much quieter than usual. Dana Rogers from Wisconsin runs a business here.
My family's worried because you watch the news and you see the supermarkets and you hear about cities being quarantined. So my mom yesterday was like, I'm really worried. I think you should come home.
The number of cases also at worrying level in South Korea. Overnight, authorities raiding the headquarters of this church in Gwacheon, where the first COVID-19 case was reported. Health officials trying to test more than 200,000 members. As the World Health Organization struggles to figure out exactly how the virus is transmitted, health officials say it could turn into a global pandemic. The CDC issuing its highest travel warning, telling Americans to avoid all non-essential travel.
It's time to do everything you would do in preparing for a pandemic.
And a new hotspot emerging for the virus, Iran, where there's been a sudden and alarming spike in cases. 2 more with the COVID-19 have died. The death toll now at least 15. Schools and universities in 14 provinces across the country shutting down. And in the US, the number of confirmed cases at 53. The effects of the virus felt far and wide, from Wall Street to Hollywood, where Paramount Pictures announced Monday it was stopping its production of Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible 7 in Venice out of an abundance of caution for the safety and well-being of our cast and crew. And we're now hearing that a health minister in Iran has now tested positive for coronavirus. A lot to worry about. Michael?
All right, thank you, Jane. We're now joined by our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Jennifer Ashton. And Doc, we see these cases popping up in many other countries now. So what does that say or tell us about the coronavirus?
Well, I think the first thing, Michael, is that we don't know if all of these other cases is the coronavirus or COVID-19 behaving differently, being more easily transmitted from person to person, or whether their reporting capacity is different and better than we saw in the past, month and a half to almost 2 months. When you talk about the numbers, I want to emphasize this. It's not the case number and the death number that really is important here. We have to look at how many are exposed, how many are infected, how many of those infected actually develop symptoms, how many of those people are then tested and test positive. Then we can calculate a severity rate and a fatality rate. And right now, Michael, all of those numbers have been elusive.
Well, we're starting to hear the word pandemic.
Yeah.
And how likely is that to happen? And is the world prepared for a virus to spread like that?
Well, the second part is the key question. In terms of the word choice and the language, it's more important to focus on the response, both here and in other parts of the world. But very interesting, Michael, in October, Johns Hopkins University did a global pandemic preparedness drill. They found that no country is fully prepared to deal with an epidemic or a pandemic. Only 19% of the countries they evaluated got top marks for detection. And look at that number, Michael. 77% of countries couldn't even collect or report data in real time. That's the problem here. So what happens in other parts of the world affects us.
All right, Doc, thank you for giving it to us straight. Appreciate it, Doc.
You bet.
Robin?
Another effect, we saw the massive stock market plunge. This outbreak is beginning to have a real impact on the economy here and around the world. Our chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, is at the New York Stock Exchange with more. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Robin. Yeah, and it's that coronavirus uncertainty which sent the Dow plunging more than 1,000 points yesterday, its worst day in more than 2 years. And here's the issue. Many U.S. companies do significant amounts of business in China. It's a manufacturing hub for companies like Apple, like Nike, but also a number of small businesses who manufacture their products there and then sell them here. Things like iPhones, which Apple has already said we're facing temporary shortages of of because the factories there have been shut indefinitely. Plus, there are things like the ingredients that go into U.S. healthcare products, U.S. antibiotics. The FDA now reportedly potentially looking at drug shortages because of the ingredients coming from there. And the concern now going forward, Michael, is this is now spreading to more than 32 countries, and that has major economic consequences. Michael?
A lot of concern, Rebecca. Thank you so much. And now we're going to turn to that winter blast. Two storms colliding and bringing the heaviest snow of the season to the Midwest, expected to hit Detroit hard. Ginger is here with the latest. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning, Michael. Blinding snow in Frisco, Colorado gives us a little glimpse into what could be happening as it moves east. That was just 5 inches or so, but it was more than a foot in some places. So we're watching those warnings from Montana down to Kansas. We've got Missouri up through Michigan and New York up to Maine to be concerned about. Timing wise, it's important to watch when they do kind of merge together. Detroit by Wednesday morning could rival one of their biggest snows of the season, looking for somewhere around a half foot. Toledo, South Bend, Fort Wayne all included. And then Buffalo, wind behind this too, George. We'll be watching it all.
We know you will. Okay, Ginger, thanks very much. The race for the White House now, and what could be a decisive battle in South Carolina. 7 candidates on the stage there tonight, with frontrunner Bernie Sanders sure to be targeted for his defense of socialism and Fidel Castro. State a must-win for Joe Biden, and Michael Bloomberg hoping to get back in the game after his debate fail last week. Eva Pilgrim is tracking it all in Charleston. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, George. No question, Bernie Sanders will be the target of a lot of those attacks. This debate tonight is critical. It's the last one before South Carolina and Super Tuesday.
Bernie Sanders squarely in the lead with a target now on his back. The attacks coming from every direction.
Bernie supports the filibuster. I'm going to get rid of the filibuster because I want to get something done.
I do not support Medicare for all.
But I profoundly disagree with his solutions.
Most Democrats are looking for a different answer than what Senator Sanders is offering.
New ads attacking Sanders are also being released by former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. And Joe Biden also taking on Sanders in this new ad.
When it comes to building on President Obama's legacy, Bernie Sanders just can't be trusted.
Despite the onslaught of attacks, Sanders appearing unfazed.
It is a little bit funny to find myself as the so-called front runner.
The Biden campaign desperate to reset in their firewall state.
It all starts here in South Carolina. It starts here for real.
Tonight's debate crucial for the former vice president and former frontrunner who must win South Carolina to have any realistic chance at the nomination.
Do you think you can win here in South Carolina?
I know I can.
By enough?
By plenty.
And Michael Bloomberg also looking for debate redemption tonight, George. He's got to turn it around at this debate.
Eva Pilgrim, thanks very much. South Carolina votes on Saturday. Then the big contest a week from today, Super Tuesday, 15 contests that could decide the nomination. I'll be anchoring our special coverage with our political team starting at 8 Eastern. Robin?
And George, we're going to turn now to that history on the basketball court. Sabrina Ionescu doing something no one has ever done before in Division I history. With the rebound, the Oregon senior became the first player, get this, 2,000 points, 1,000 assists, 1,000 rebounds. That is a career triple-double, and she did it while battling the flu. Also, Oregon clinched a share of the Pac-12 regular season title for the 3rd consecutive season. And Sabrina reached the milestone hours after paying tribute to Kobe and his daughter at their memorial in Los Angeles. Knew them both well.
What a superstar. Yeah. We're going to have a lot more on that memorial coming up, including Vanessa Bryant's powerful message about Kobe and Gianna, speaking publicly for the first time about the loss of her husband and daughter. And of course, we'll have the emotional tribute from Michael Jordan as well. First, let's go to Ginger.
And we've been talking about that storm. Wanted to show you in snow totals where some of those bigger pockets will end up. It is interior New England, right along that Canadian border. That happens Thursday. Your local weather in 30 seconds. First, the Tuesday Trivia, sponsored by Subaru.
When I started this commute, everyone said I was crazy. So 15 years ago, I got my first Subaru, and I did it anyway. For more than 500,000 miles, my Outback always got me there. So when it was time, of course I got a new one. Because my kids still need me. And I need them.
Welcome to the all-new Subaru Outback, the most reliable Outback ever.
Go where love takes you.
Take the umbrella today heading out the door. You're going to need it early on. We've got some steady rain coming through until about 10 a.m. to noon today. But notice the temperature is up to 53, even 54 degrees during the afternoon. Overcast and even the fog for this evening, and pretty foggy too for early Wednesday morning with drizzle. Then it's late day rain tomorrow with thunder, the high 58, but temperatures fall quickly by the end of the work week. 44 Thursday with sunshine, 42 on Friday, 38 the high for Saturday.
We'll be right back.
Alexios.